Tell me about why you think that the pubs and the restaurant industry is being targeted so heavily, because in every experience I've had here in London, these people are going out of their ways, following everything by the book. Like you said, the one-way systems, the hand sanitizers, closing down tables that are in between. I mean, and this is already in an industry that has to keep food safety standards. So everything already is primed to be one of the cleanest places you're going to go. And yet this is the one it seems to be getting shut down first. Can you just tell me why you think that's happening? And, the frustration you're hearing from the pub owners.
Yeah, I think first of all, it's easy to scapegoat pubs and publicans and to wrongly blame them actually for some of the incidences where people have occasionally behaved in a way that's unacceptable. People have seen pictures, for example, of the curfew. Now, publicans and indeed many politicians and all the organisations representing hospitality, including pubs, have said that the curfew was a crazy idea in this country and it would indeed lead to those things. But I think the other factor is that some people have this sense, it's only pubs, it's only drinking. We don't need to do that. We have to keep the schools open, which we should. People should go to university. Well, I'm not sure quite that has been the right thing to do if students are not getting the experience that they've paid for, frankly. I think that's a separate issue. But it's this lack of understanding of the role that pubs themselves play in our communities, a vital role up and down, whether it's in London pubs, which are so important to the capital in its character and its appeal to the millions of tourists that come every year, or whether it's in our provincial towns, cities and villages. But it also completely fails to understand that reality that so many families, and I use that very deliberately, so many British families are reliant on pubs for their income. Now that's people who work behind the bar, it's people who clean, it's the publicans themselves, and indeed it's their suppliers, it's our brewers who are now finding that they can't sell product even that they've brewed in areas like Liverpool. They already had their beer brewed and ready to go, and now the pubs are shut because they were shut with 2 days' notice without any compensation. So I'm afraid it appears to be a little easy for some people who have stable, salaried jobs that are unaffected by this crisis to say, close the pubs, we don't need them, without realising the catastrophic effect that is having on lives, on human beings and on families. And if that carries on without support, then the impact on those lives and therefore on society will be very, very grave indeed. So I'd ask people, rather than making glib comments about, we can close pubs down, that we don't need pubs at this time, actually consider the impact of doing that on those people and on those families, because that has to be factored in, and it's clearly not being factored in to the thinking at the moment. And our view is that pubs can and should operate sensibly. They've already shown that they can. They've shown that the spread is minimal and can be managed. And if people breach those rules, they should indeed be punished. But everyone else can operate sensibly, and that at least allows people to continue to make a living. But if the government closes businesses down and stops people making an honest living, stops people making a livelihood, stops them being able to feed their children, it must support them financially, and in a way it's not doing at the moment, and that is not sensible. So the government has to make a choice. If it's going to introduce these restrictions, if that's the strategy it intends to follow, and it's the government, it makes those decisions, it must back that up with giving the evidence and explaining to people, but it must back it up with solid financial support and not the meagre package that is on offer only if you're forced to close, because that is leaving so many pubs in London now in Tier 2, in the rest of the country in Tier 2, and indeed in Tier 1, where the restrictions, the curfew and the rule of 6 apply. They need to support it, because frankly, many publicans are saying to me, they will never have a politician that hasn't supported them through this in their pub again. It's very easy, and I used to be one, to have a picture taken in your local pub and say how much you love the pub. But now we need to see our politicians, our MPs, our national government, our government up in Scotland, and our mayors of our cities and our councils speaking up for pubs and publicans and fighting for that support if we have to have these restrictions. But I also think that we need to question the strategy, because in the end, I think we need to live alongside this awful disease. And pubs and publicans have shown that that's possible if we're sensible. And I believe that that would be the better strategy. But in the meantime, the government need to dig into their pockets and support them before we have a catastrophe of losing pubs and also ruining lives.